All right, Nick Caserio, you sly devil, you did it. Pulled off an intra-divisional trade as I was editing a video about whether or not the Texans should go after Cooper Kupp. I hit send and publish, and then boom, Christian Kirk from the wide receiver from the Jacksonville Jaguars goes to the Houston Texans in exchange for a 7th-round pick. Christian Kirk was in the last year of his deal. The Texans had either they'd been planning to release him if they couldn't get a trade. This is a classic one of those, hey, Texans got a chance to get a guy before he hits the open market. They'll probably have to rework the deal, but as of right now, it's $16.5 million in salary. I saw $15.5 million reported one place, $16.5 somewhere. Let's call it $16 million or so, which is much, much, much less than the $30 million per year and 1 or 2 high draft picks that DK Metcalf would have commanded. I've never been I have not wanted the Texans to try to go after somebody like that. They already have their stud Nico Collins. They need to flesh out this roster. Christian Kirk kind of splits the middle. I was saying for Cooper Kupp, maybe you get him as a free agent on a $10 or $11 million deal. That's what Texans cap had predicted he might get. Christian Kirk is much younger, still 27, 28 years old, definitely not 30 yet. And he's been beleaguered by injuries the last couple of years. Remember, the Jaguars signed him in 2022 to much criticism because of how lucrative the deal was. Then he went off in 2022. Actually, I have a game from this is either 2022 or 2023. We'll just show a few quick highlights. But he's got 1 year left on the deal. Maybe they rework that, if only just to make it more cap friendly. I don't know if they're going to plan on doing a 2 or 3 year real 2 or 3 year deal with him. The Texans have established themselves as a place that's a good prove it place. So Christian Kirk comes in 2022, has an awesome season. Then in 2023, through a combination of Calvin Ridley taking some targets, but then also Christian Kirk had an abdominal strain. What did they call it? It was an abdominal something or other. And then last year, he broke his collarbone, not to mention they have the rookie Brian Thomas that's playing very, very well there. So a guy that plays the majority of his snaps in the slot, he's 5'11", 200 pounds. He's an Aggie. There's a lot to like about this that, for one, if we look at it realistically with Tank Dell just now had his ACL surgery. He had the previous surgery to repair some of the other, I guess, the less important ligaments. They're all freaking important. And then they do the big kahuna, the ACL, which typically for NFL players on a normal just an ACL is a 9 to 12 month recovery. And for a guy like Tank Dell who had multiple traumas, it's really unrealistic to expect Tank Dell to be ready for 2025 at all. You had to take care of, last year we had 2 small shifty guys in Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell. At the very least, have one going into the draft, and I think this is something that Nick likes to do. He takes guys on prove-it deals or 1 or 2 year contracts that have upside, incentivizes them, but then also you can go into the draft without glaring needs. I think we're going to see either a trade or a defensive tackle acquisition at some point here, probably something on an interior offensive line. And I don't think they're going to be of the marquee value or the marquee name recognition types of signings, but guys who are solid starters. And Christian Kirk is that. He's had a bad stretch of luck with injuries, not to mention up and down quarterback play and offensive line play and everything else that's been going on in Jacksonville. He gets a fresh slate. We'll see later on if Nick already has a deal in place for what they might give him in a contract. You got to think, from Christian Kirk's perspective, he might have been thinking, okay, wow, it looks like I'm going to be a free agent, and been expecting maybe a 3-year deal offer or something. So sometimes these things are smoothed out in advance. They could have been talking about that already. The 14 games missed in the last couple of years, he's going to be used as a slot, and the no glaring holes part is big. I don't think this precludes them from signing another veteran wide receiver. If it were a guy like Cooper Kupp, I'd be surprised if they did it, but Cooper Kupp at a relative discount, then you've got to wait. I think you've got to wait and see what happens in the draft, and then maybe some other veteran guy there can fill in the holes. Let's see. I can't do all of that. We're gonna get D Hopper Adams next. Okay. All right. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Okay. This is good because it's progress. You're filling in holes. I don't think they could go into the season or maybe even into the draft having Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie as your second and third receivers, just because I think those guys are complementary pieces. Maybe under Nick Caley, they'll demonstrate a better version of themselves, but you've seen enough of them over the last couple years that you know that you got to keep adding and bolstering and create competition there. So I think Christian Kirk, who again had a great year in 2022, the deal, which was much maligned at the time of the signing, ended up looking really good at the end of 2022. It just hasn't worked that way forever. Caserio doing Caserio things. Yes, it's going to be a very active offseason. Tell me what to think, Seth. Also help the next 2 hours go by quickly. I can't stay on with you for 2 hours. I gotta go watch this Netflix series that my wife and I have been watching. Christian Kirk is a good fit if healthy. Now remember, we don't know exactly what Caley's scheme is going to look like, other than that, hey, the Rams in the past, and then certainly the Patriots, have used slot receivers very effectively. And I'm not going to sit here and act like Christian Kirk is the next Wes Welker or Julian Edelman or something. But what I'd really love to see is more of a developed, short and quick passing game. The offensive line is obviously part and parcel to all of that. But one of the more frustrating things about Bobby Slowick's offense last year was, man, you're seeing all of this zone coverage, and why are you not carving people up underneath? Why are you not running the ball and carving people up in the soft spots in the zone? I don't know. I wanted to see crossers and mesh concept and everything else like that, and we saw little doses of them here and there, but Christian Kirk certainly gives you the ability to do that. He's got to stay healthy. The injuries were an abdominal strain and a broken clavicle, so they're nothing that are hard to recover from or would have inhibited his athleticism, and certainly not the broken clavicle last year. That's just, you recovered, bone heals, and you're good to go. Other than the normal worries about smaller receivers in general, but that's what you're going to get in a slot receiver. Adams, yes. Hop, no. Yeah, remember what DeMeco Ryans said about what he looks for in a receiver. I put this in my magnificent Cooper Kupp video earlier, 45 minutes ago, and I'm guessing it's not going to get a whole bunch of traction now. Let me play DeMeco from the Combine a couple years ago. This is what DeMeco Ryans looks for in wide receivers.
Yeah, with the receiver position, we're looking for guys who are separators, right? Who can separate, who can find a way to get open, right? And if you have that one redeeming quality that you can separate, right, that's what we're looking for. Especially that shows up on third down, right? How do you win third down? How do you stay on the field as an offense, right, and continue to produce and move the ball down the field? It's about third down, right, and being able to convert. And the way you convert is guys who are savvy enough to find a way to always get open.
Yeah, so I played that video because somebody had suggested DeAndre Hopkins. That's not DeAndre Hopkins' forte. Obviously, DeAndre has worth as a wide receiver. I don't think that reunification is exactly what we need. If I read the tweet correctly before I came on here, I believe Evan Ingram is going to be released by the Jaguars. So that's another interesting name to add to the mix. Somebody correct me on here if I read that wrong. As John says, no way I'm watching that Cooper Kupp video. Come on, man. I'm going to repurpose it. It was mostly I spent a bunch of time getting highlights together, and I realized I put those Evan Ingram highlights together in about 10. This is a trick with YouTube. You got to keep the clips to less than 6 seconds, or they copyright strike you. Which is fine if you're just putting it out as a video, but when you're on a live stream, they'll shut our whole damn thing down. Let's see. So it's a good chance we're passing on Elijah Moore. Possibly. I don't know, man. Listen. I gave up trying to figure out what Nick's going to do long ago, all right? The moment that Nick got that pile of treasure for Deshaun Watson, a full 18 months after I would have bailed and traded him for like a second-round pick or something, I said, all right, I'm not going to underestimate Nick. I'm not going to complain about when there's periods of inactivity. He's one of the most active GMs in the NFL. Mind you, who did he pull this trade off with? The magnificent Gladstone. The buzzword using young savant, the 34-year-old GM from the Jaguars, and it's an interdivisional trade, so that's always fun. 2 games a year, Christian Kirk going to be hyper motivated. What I like out of my coordinators is when they take guys like Christian Kirk or sometimes a defensive end or a linebacker or a safety, when those guys are playing against their old team, you specifically game plan to get those guys production. Like, you got to be careful, you don't want to go overboard with it, but those guys are always so hyper motivated. As much AFC South beef as possible. This division needs beef. It needs publicity. It needs the attention that it's starting to get a little bit because of Pat McAfee and J.J. Watt. That's why one of my dreams is for Aaron Rodgers to go to the Titans. I want Anthony Richardson to continue completing 49% of his passes. He's 50.6% on his career, but he was below 50% on the season. That's what I want. I want all of that. Give it all to me. Jags just cut Ronald Darby. And yes, Evan Ingram is being released. The free agents, especially amongst wide receivers, are not a hugely electrifying bunch. Chris Godwin, obviously, yes, and then DK Metcalf. I don't want to trade for DK Metcalf. I want my picks. I want Nick to prove that he can continue to get the Will Andersons and CJ Strouds of the world when he's working alongside D'Amico Ryans. It is something I'm guilty of. I almost kind of ignore Casario's drafts before D'Amico showed up, because I do believe that coaches and GMs, if they have a good working relationship, get on the same page and figure out who they like, what's the vocabulary we speaking, are we seeing things with the same set of eyes? So, yes, he is a true number two to, I would say he's definitely, if healthy, a true number two to Collins. I mean, he's going to be playing in the slot. So about 2/3 to 75% of his snaps, I think, are in the slot, and he's 5'11", 200. He does play on the outside. When he was with the Cardinals, I thought his most vicious work was done in the slot. So I think wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, it all depends on how the offense shakes out. At least one more solid wide receiver. Whether you're saying that we needed Christian Kirk or what have you, I think they're going to draft a wide receiver. I'll be surprised if they don't. It's the way the draft is playing out. There's just so many guys that are enticing that in the mock drafts, typically there's a guy that you like at 25. Who goes here, who goes there, we don't know. But if it's Golden, if it's I'm blanking on the one kid, the Luther kid. If it's Ibuka's not as electrifying and as exciting to watch on film, but I could see why they'd like him. Ibuka would be a great second round pick, I think. I'd feel awesome about him in the second round. In the first round, I'm kind of like, okay, is he just an awesome dude that's really polished? And sometimes you almost get wary of guys that are super polished in college playing for good teams because their ceiling is only so high. But likewise, I was kind of skeptical of Henry To'oTo'o for the same reason, but he ended up becoming a different guy in this second year. Defensive tackle or OG in the first round, more likely. For now, yes. But again, I think Nick really likes to go into the draft without having any glaring needs, and ultimately that's what'll tell the story is, all right, do they go into the draft so they can be in position to draft the best player available? And he's done a good job getting defensive tackles in and getting the most out of them. These guys come in, they play well, they get a bigger contract elsewhere. That's cool, because that makes them a destination for affordable guys, and there's a few guys like that in the defensive tackle class this free agency. The guards are almost as enticing. Yes, yeah, John, I agree. I think the guards and the wide receivers, it's a good year. If you have to pick number 25, if you have to go and win the division and be in the playoffs and pick 25, fine. But you get the lower draft pick. This is a good year to need a guard and to need a wide receiver when you have the 25th overall pick. I'm going to get going. Thank you. I'll have a better and more coherent video on this at some point. Tune into Sports Radio 610 in the morning. If you haven't already. I know you're on your phones and everything. You got stuff going on. Your damn kids are screaming and everything. Just hit the like button. Tell your kids to cram it for a minute, or you're not going to go to Disney World because you got to like Seth Payne's video.